don't ever try to embarrass someone. That's not the best approach. It might get things done in the short run, but long term, you're going to destroy that relationship if you are embarrassing them. You have to be really intentional about how we are seeing people, asking the questions, and really being wise about things. It's really easy to just say things at face value or to read too much into things, but it takes a lot of effort. And that's why I say that leadership is hard. You have to be intentional about assessing things in the moment and not always be looking at what has happened in the past.
Turn this up, turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Faronbi, aka IncrediPaul, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where I talk to incredible people, do incredible things so we can become the most incredible versions of ourselves. First off, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I also want you to know you can also watch this episode on YouTube. Regardless if you're listening or watching this show, I really appreciate your support. Bonus points for doing both as well. If you've ever thought about podcasting, or maybe you just want to be a community of podcasters getting new tips and tricks, ideas, check out my podcast community. Also, if you want to learn more about the Be Incredible Starter Pack, includes resume template, budget template, interview guide, and leadership masterclass, you can learn about both of those things by going to IncrediPaul.org. So quick commercial, but really want to dive into this episode. I am talking about feedback. And no, I'm not talking about the sound that happens when you get a mic too close to the speakers. I know, bad joke, but my name is IncrediPaul. What do you expect? But in all seriousness, feedback is something that's talked about a lot, but I don't always see people talk about how to do it. So I want to go deeper into this in this episode, talking about giving feedback as well as receiving feedback. And I purposely want to start with receiving feedback because I think it's really important to receive feedback well before you ever give it. The first mistake I see people often make is they assume that they will get feedback and it's just going to happen. But the thing is, most of the time, people don't volunteer feedback. And the higher up you go in your career, in your life, whatever you're doing, whether if it's career or your entrepreneurship, people are not often going to offer a feedback. You have to be intentional about giving feedback. Most people don't like giving feedback. Why? Because most people don't take feedback well, so they don't want to ask for it, or they don't want to give it because they're afraid they might have to get it themselves. So you really have to be intentional about asking for feedback. And the second thing to think about when you are asking for feedback or even receiving feedback is, do I receive feedback well? And this is something I have to ask myself all the time. It's not something I'm perfect at. I know this is the fact I'm recording this. I'm sure there's going to be an opportunity for me to receive feedback in the next couple of weeks. It's just how it goes when you talk about things, opportunities come. But think about when you're giving feedback, when people give you feedback, how well do you actually receive it? I've definitely been guilty of throwing it off and saying that, hey, that's not how I am, or you didn't understand me, all of those things. But when you do that, you prevent people from wanting to give you feedback in the future. So you really have to be intentional about how you're receiving the feedback and understand that a lot of communication is nonverbal. Depending on the studies you see, up to 70% or 68% of communication is nonverbal. So even if you're not saying anything, if you're crossing your arms, if you're frowning, all these different things, you have to be really intentional about your nonverbals when you are getting feedback. When you do get feedback, whether it's positive or negative, emphasis on the negative, say thank you. And I know what you're thinking. Paul, what if the feedback doesn't make sense? What if the feedback is wrong? All these different things. We will get to that later. In the moment, say thank you. Why are you saying thank you? First of all, like I mentioned, it's hard for people to give feedback in the first place. People are terrified. It often doesn't land well. So saying thank you puts people at ease and they're more likely to give you feedback in the future, whether that's positive or negative. And a lot of times with positive feedback, a lot of times it's if you are someone that doesn't receive positive feedback well, like maybe you throw it off or you just say thank you. I've been more intentional about this because I'll downplay the different things I do. And I've been more intentional about saying thank you when people compliment me or give me feedback that's positive. And I've seen in others as well is when people are giving you positive feedback, just say thank you. If they give you negative feedback, say thank you. It's coming from a perspective that they have, realizing that no one is with you all the time at every moment. Even if they are, they don't know what your inner thoughts are saying to yourself. And motivation and what actually happens are not always the same. Perception is often reality. So even if you had meant something differently, but it was received differently, what they received is what really matters. Perception is reality. So say thank you, whether it's positive or negative. I think on the negative side, it's really easy to jump in there and say, oh, you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. This is what it actually means. In the moment, say thank you, wrap it up. I think at a later point, and it might be a few minutes later, if you come back to them and explain, I think that's totally fine. But in that moment, if you're automatically dismissing the feedback, that's not going to go well. People are not going to want to give you feedback because they don't think you're actually receiving the feedback. So you want to make sure that people are realizing that you're going to receive feedback. They're actually going to give you feedback and you actually have to apply it. So that really goes into the next thing is taking action on feedback. It can be as simple as just making sure people understand your reasoning behind things. Like no one is a mind reader, and oftentimes we are perceive people from the perspective from what we are doing or what we are thinking, whether or not that is accurate. So if you have rose-colored glasses, you think everyone is doing things for the right reasons. That's not always the case. If you're a pessimist, you think everyone is out to get you or things are not good, and that's not always the case either. You have to be really intentional about how we are seeing people, asking the questions, and really being wise about things. It's really easy to just say things at face value or to read too much into things, but it takes a lot of effort. And that's why I say that leadership is hard. You have to be intentional about assessing things in the moment and not always be looking at what has happened in the past because moments can change and shift and there's context really matters. So you have to be really, really intentional about this and really resist the urge to correct people in the moment because they're not going to want to give you feedback like I mentioned. But I know you all are incredible. You listen to this podcast. You are all about becoming the most incredible version of yourself. So you might not have issues with this. So I'm not preach to the choir, as they say, but maybe you'll be in contact with other people who are not the best at this and keep that in mind when you're communicating with them or when you're trying to give feedback to someone. They might always receive it the best. So talked a lot about receiving feedback because I think that is really the most critical part. A lot of us don't receive feedback really well, present company included. I'm trying to be more intentional about it. I'm definitely a lot better at it now, but I have times when I slip up on it. So this is a reminder for me too. But talk about giving feedback. First of all, decide when the best time it is to give feedback. Often that is in a private moment, one-on-one. Maybe sometimes you have to give it publicly, but if you do have to give it publicly, keep it short. Don't try to embarrass anyone. Obviously, if it's positive feedback, you can give that publicly, but also keep in mind the person that you're giving that feedback to and the amount of audience that is there. Sometimes people like to get their feedback more in private, even if it is positive, because they don't like to be put on the spot. And maybe recognition is a form of feedback. And some people prefer one-on-one private recognition as opposed to public recognition. But I think a lot of times we think everyone wants public recognition, but not everyone does. It can be embarrassing. Just depends on how you do it. If you're not calling them out or making them talk about something, then maybe it's fine. But really knowing the person, and this comes down to understanding how that person wants to receive recognition, receive feedback, and then you can go from there. But best case, what you can assume for negative feedback is don't give that publicly unless it's something that is happening that's derailing the derailing a meeting. Maybe someone is really attacking someone and you have to give them feedback in a moment. Obviously, don't shy away from that. Like give that feedback right away and get everything back on track. But in most cases, you can give negative feedback at a private moment. Don't ever try to embarrass someone. That is not the best way to do it. Like sometimes you have to match energy, so to speak. And I fully believe like when you can see someone is coming at you and really combative, and maybe you have to match that energy to bring them down a little bit, or just make sure everything is okay and not just shrink back and let someone overpower you. There's a balance to it, but most of the time you don't ever try to embarrass someone. That's not the best approach. It might get things done in the short run, but long term, you're going to destroy that relationship if you are embarrassing them. Overall, be careful how you approach it, evaluate it, ask for feedback when you're giving feedback to other people in the room or when you've given feedback to someone and how you're approaching how people want to receive it as well. I know a lot of people talk about a feedback sandwich where the good feedback is like the bread and the bad feedback is the meat. So you have good and bad and good feedback. I don't believe in doing that. I think the best way to approach feedback is to do it as quickly as possible in the moment if you can, or shortly after the moment, whether it's good or bad feedback, and have that as a constant conversation. Like obviously, if you have one-on-ones with them, then maybe you can have those opportunities when you're giving people that bad feedback then, but be intentional about giving them good feedback too. Don't only give people bad feedback. That's going to bring them down. It's going to make them feel down on themselves and not the best way to approach it. But sometimes you have to give tough feedback, and some people can only improve when they're giving that feedback. There's been situations I've seen in different places I worked where people have just never gotten feedback about how things are bad until it gets to a certain point where it meets a point of no return and they don't see it. They don't see it anymore and they reject it because for so long people either didn't say anything or give them good feedback. So they thought everything was fine. So be really mindful and intentional about making sure that you're giving timely feedback, especially if you're someone's manager. Give them the positive, but especially give them the corrective or negative feedback so that they can actually adapt and change. But you don't have to be someone superior to give them feedback. You don't have to report to them. You can get feedback from peers. And honestly, I think feedback from peers is probably the best place to do it. You are at the same level when you're giving feedback. Also, be ready to receive it as well. Not always in the moment. Sometimes people will do it like a tit for tat, like for giving a feedback if they think it's a negative thing. You just have to be mindful of all of this has a lot of emotional intelligence, be self-aware, have social awareness, all of these different things, how to approach it. It takes a lot of practice, takes a lot of mental energy, but it is something that is necessary because we all have blind spots. We all have things that we don't see about ourselves. And feedback is the only way we're able to see those things. And be intentional about asking for feedback and receiving feedback well is the only way to get better at it. Having a relationship with the person you're giving feedback is critical. You're less likely to receive feedback from someone that doesn't know you at all because you're not going to see that as valuable. Because first of all, it's a perspective thing, and if they don't see themselves in that way and they don't know you as well, they're going to think like, "Well, who's this person giving me feedback? They have no idea who I am, what I'm doing." So you can try to give them feedback. Most likely, it's not going to be received well, but really be intentional about giving people positive feedback. So my gift is an encouragement. So I try to give people encouragement and tell them the things are doing well as much as possible. How you can tell if someone needs encouragement is this. Took a breath, because if someone is breathing, they need encouragement. And what you don't realize, especially the more senior leaders, which you can give senior leaders feedback as well, they probably need encouragement or feedback more than most people. You get to a certain point where people just stop saying anything to you, getting being in relationship with them, building friendships with them so you can give them feedback, even if you might be two or three levels below them. That is really powerful to be able to give them feedback because that's something they want the feedback. They don't always get it. It's powerful. But as I wrap things up, be intentional about asking for feedback. Also, don't be afraid to give feedback. Do these things and you too can be incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible. Incredible.